Hello and welcome to Eye on Oakland. I'm Chuck Moss, your host, and here we have one of our favorite people and our favorite guests, actually, Dani Walsh, who is the Bloomfield Township Supervisor. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Chuck. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a delight.
Oh, well, I will say at the end of it, but no, it's good. No, don't worry. So I'm welcome back and in studio.
I love it.
We're finally doing it back in studio after 4 years of flattening the curve. But here we are, and I'm glad to see you. So I'm going to just throw the quick hard ball at you and see how you can do. Are you ready?
Okay.
What's going on at the township?
So much is going on at the township. That could be a whole hour show in itself. Right now, our biggest focuses are we're in towards the end of our strategic plan, which we have not had one here for 15 years. And it's different than a master plan. I know some people are kind of confused because master plans take a couple of years. It involves zoning and it involves land use. This is a strategic plan, which is about your goal and your mission, so that when you're spending money, you actually know what the residents want to spend on. And I think that's kind of why we got away a little bit from the crux of needs and services, because when you don't have a plan, you're just shooting and responding to whatever's in front of your face. So that whole budget crisis of 2019 and everything that accumulated from not having that vision is why this was so important. So this at a group our size, it's usually anywhere from like 4 to 6 months. And we actually had the best input that they've ever had in person since 2020. They were saying, you might expect like 20, 30 people. That's good. We had 130 show up in person.
That sounds like Birmingham. Everybody wants to show up. Yeah.
And ours is a little different than theirs in that they didn't use an actual strategic planning company. They used like a local person who's known more for leadership training. So theirs took a little longer because it's not somebody who's an expert in that field. We decided to go with one of the national best companies. They have 850 employees who do this every day.
Which one?
It's called Barry Dunn,
Oh.
and they're out of Maine. They're one of the best in their field for the last 50 years. Yeah.
Maine, who'd think that?
Right? And they do have local presence. So we did have 2 people who are here locally. We also had somebody come from Wisconsin. So they tend to bring people that are similar, so Midwest area. But it was.
Well, I find that totally insulting that they would consider us with Wisconsin.
Well, it's better than
kindness. Is it better than
right?
It's better than Ohio?
We did say, please no
okay.
Ohio.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, you got to do that. That makes sense.
But yeah, they have said they are just amazed. Like our panels, the people that were involved as stakeholders, we had business leaders, religious leaders, education, we had students, we had everybody, we had hundreds of people involved in those. And they said in some areas they can't even get 1 or 2 business leaders to show up. We had 30. We had 3 different cohorts. So it's amazing to see that the township, the community was ready. They're like, hey, here's our voice. We're ready to tell you. So it's been amazing. So that finishes. And we're also in the midst of a compensation study. Compensation benefits. I inherited some contracts that unfortunately were done before a study came, so with no data, they weren't necessarily as aggressive as they could have been. And with the world changing, like you said, a lot has happened in 4 years. So we are going through a very intense benefits and compensation study with also some private sector compatibles, because we want to be the best of the best and not just compare ourselves to what everybody around us is doing.
Well, you've got a lot of good people to compare themselves to, but nonetheless, that's still good.
Yeah.
Now, strategic plan, it's a 5-year plan, you said?
Right. So it lets you know your 5-year, and it first is the goal and the vision that you create, and then the people who have the hardest job is actually the department heads, who we give this broad whisk of here's our 5 pillars, here's our goals, how do we get there? So they actually have spent intense hours together with Barry Dunn to say, okay, to get to here, these are all the steps you need over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So we will have a roadmap. So it's not just something to put on a wall. It's not just this is our mission and you stick it on a wall.
It says our mission. Our mission is to
Right.
make sure that everybody feels happy and nobody is sad.
Right.
Yeah.
And instead it's our mission is to do this and this is how we're going to get there.
Well, so 5 years. If you had a 10-year plan, would it be time for MDOT to get Square Lake and I-75 extension done?
Right.
Are they ever going to get that done?
I will
It's
say
MDOT.
that the MDOT, when I first came in, we were at that point where they were about to take out one of our ramps too. I don't know if you remember.
I do remember that was Optic, right?
Right.
Optic, which I get off on.
It's amazing. They didn't, because when you think about it, it just looks like this small little exit or entrance, but you have Auburn Hills, you have Pontiac, you have all of them, all those trucks would have been forced on the residences.
You also have all the people like me who live on Adams Road but don't want to get off on Adams Road because it's going to be locked. So we get off on Opdyke, we take Opdyke down, get on Woodward and go. So yes.
Yeah, it would have been horrible. So I will say that we created some friendships with Lori Swanson, is the MDOT deputy director in this area, or director, and so she now has us sitting at the table so those kind of issues don't happen again. But yeah, it is. The delay was a little bit of a rework because we kind of forced their hand of, your plan isn't okay, we need to start over.
Well, good.
So it took a little extra time, but we saved the ramp. That's what we needed.
Good, because I always thought traffic is like water, and water will what was it, old Glenn Hagee used to say, water always wins.
Right.
If you block up one way, it's going to come other ways.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm glad, because I use the Opdyke one a lot too.
And I don't think people realize when you look at a picture, a few are like, well, it's not a big deal. And I said, just for the next 2 weeks, tell me if you use that. And they don't live anywhere near it, mind you. And they would say, yeah, actually, I did use it the other day.
That's why we have what's called traffic studies.
Right.
Let's sit there and count how many.
Right.
Remember one where it's like, nobody uses it, and they counted it, and they came back like,
right.
Everybody uses it.
Right.
Great. So major outlines of the strategic plan, like we're not gonna tear down Leo's Coney Island or something. What are the major outlines that you're on?
So some of it goes to our goal is right now, like green space is a very big thing. Obviously, at 98% residential, we don't have land to acquire unless you have some funding available or a plan. So with a couple of us on the past board, we're very pro pocket parks. Like, we're never going to have a Marshbank Park of West Bloomfield, which is gorgeous, but there will never be that kind of land available.
We're Birmingham. We're your parks.
Right, exactly.
Come in, and please do come and use them.
I do always say thank you to Steve Kaplan and Jana of thank you for all the
Yes.
parks.
I'm very please do.
Right.
Please do. And come use our downtown.
Right, exactly. And if we don't thrive with each other, then, I mean, that always helps everybody better off. So I absolutely go downtown to Birmingham.
Please
and
come,
to
bring your
downtown
money. We love it. Yeah, it's
There
good.
you go.
Good.
So another vision too is just focusing a lot of our funds on also a welcoming community. Like, is it just you go to work and you come home? Or could we, even though we won't have a downtown, is there a way to get businesses that are really focused on the lifestyle of the people who live here? And so it's bringing in more restaurants, bringing in smaller retail. That's, not the big box stores, but ones that are more towards that area. Like, we used to have a Rosin Sherm at Maple and Telegraph, and everybody loved it. It was a local favorite.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So bringing those kind of feels back of, we aren't going to be a Birmingham with a bustling downtown. We don't have the land.
Well, you're not that kind of community.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
You're very different.
Right.
Everybody doesn't have to be a cookie cutter.
Correct. Yeah. And so we're trying to we're actually going to have two amazing businesses. One that we're trying right now, it's going through the site plan, is Tea Times. So it's indoor, all year long golf inside with a restaurant. So, talk about entertainment.
I'm going to have to take up golf.
Right? And it's good for people who are learning. They have golf pros to help teach you there in the simulators.
Okay.
Right? And then we also have, on a bigger scale, we're going to be one of the only 3 in the country to have an Olympic training center.
Olympic Training Center.
Yes, and it's just now going through the site plan.
Like what sports? Like
it will have ice skating, tennis, lacrosse, soccer. What was some of the others?
breakdancing?
I think they're getting rid of that. I heard that it didn't last long. In the 80s, that would have been a great one.
Yeah, I was just going to say, breakdancing. What is this? Like first Ronald Reagan administration?
Right.
Michael Jackson videos? This is great. Right. Okay, well, yeah. All right, good.
And that actually came from a partnership.
Big radios, right?
Right, exactly. So the training center has actually been, for over 10 to 12 years, there's been plans trying to get this through. But we didn't have those partnerships that we needed with the MDOTs, with the RCOCs. So when there's a vacated easement that blocks a development where nobody wants to take claim, you have to bring them together. So
where would you put it?
So it's actually going to be a new development right by the Detroit Skating Club and the Bloomfield Tennis. They currently
Where are
exist. They're off of Franklin by Dennison Court. So if you're taking Telegraph and you go on to Franklin towards Pontiac side,
Okay.
it's before.
Oh,
that.
yeah, okay. So like both Square Lake and
Yes.
Franklin and up by. All right, I'll
They're
just
behind Costco, really.
Exactly. I was going to say, you do understand that the beating heart of Birmingham and Bloomfield, that whole area, is the Costco at Square Lake. You see everybody there. I go there. I see you literally see every. You know that there are women there, and they've got their cell phones, and they're out telling everybody that the Ralph Lauren shirt's here. You have to get here. So it's by the Costco.
It's right behind. So
in
you
the old
won't
Bloomfield
see it.
Park. What was Bloomfield Park area?
No, that's north of Costco. So that's that now is already full.
We'll get to that in a minute. All right, I'm going to admit this. I should not admit this. I really shouldn't, but I'm going to. I had never been to a Menards.
I have only been once.
I'd never been to a Menards. We have the True Value and hardware stores, and of course Home Depot, which is 5 minutes away. I'd never been to a Menards. I decided, let's walk in. I'm like, holy moly!
It's big, and
it's very big.
What's really confusing is that's actually Pontiac. So that Bloomfield Park is 5 acres of it is the township. The rest is Pontiac. So the Planet Fitness and Menards are actually Pontiac.
Some of us remember that battle, by the way.
Right?
we remember. I remember when they were going to put when they were toying with the idea of putting Carl's Golf Land.
Right.
As like transferring it to Birmingham.
Yeah.
It's like Birmingham, like our Alaska or Hawaii, Right. And we decided, it's the manifest destiny of Birmingham to own Carl's Golf Land. But
we're glad it stayed.
I remember that. No, it's all good. But yes, so that's really interesting. Can't wait to see that come in. And now, what I saw this. What is an external stakeholder?
So
am I one of those?
So you are actually. So internal stakeholders are people who work in the township. So the employees, the board of trustees, anybody who internally can make the changes and are affiliated with the township. External stakeholders include everybody from the residents, small business holders, or small business owners, the surrounding communities. I mean, those community forums, we're open to our surrounding communities because, as you pointed out, we use your downtown, and then with West Bloomfield, they have amazing trails. So we're all pretty connected, and even developments on the border. So you have right now, there's a country club that wants pickleball, and there's Beverly Hills, Birmingham, and Bingham Farms that come to our meetings. When West Bloomfield was looking to put in a lot of residents on Inkster and Walnut Lake, our people go there. So even the communities around you are an external stakeholder. So it basically means people who work in the township are internal. Everybody else that you need that vision from is external.
Well, once again, geez, I remember in the old days when they were talking about I never liked the word collaboration. It likes like Vichy or whatever, but cooperation was that when why do we need 99 different police departments, dispatch units, whatever? Particularly when the township is a big square, and in the middle of it is Bloomfield Hills and Birmingham. All become one unit, and the ambulances and all can go just are there, and that's worked out very well.
Right, and we do some shared services. So our 911 actually does Franklin. Mm-hmm. They actually have us as their vendor instead of the county. Bloomfield Hills is currently separate, but we have reached out to them to see if they would like to use us for they actually privatized EMS. They don't have their own EMS service. They use I don't know if it's Star or someone. Mm-hmm. So we have reached out to them. We do assessing for Sylvan Lake. We do cable for Birmingham, for Beverly Hills.
Let us be technical here. We have the Birmingham Cable Board. My bosses, who are Birmingham, the Killer Bees, Birmingham, Bloomfield, Bingham, Beverly. I think Franklin is in it. So that's
Bloomfield's not in it. It's the rest. We have our own. So the BCTV is us. Like you're right now using Bloomfield Township.
Indeed.
But we are a contractor to allow all those others that didn't have access to even show their meetings. Let alone do cool events like the Franklin Parade or Birmingham events.
The trucks and everything of Bloomfield Township. Yeah. Yes. Well, we're going to take a quick break here. We're talking with Dani Walsh, who is the Bloomfield Township Supervisor. Good news in the township. What's going on? Now, don't go away. I'm Chuck Moss, your host. We'll be right back here on Eye on Oakland. Welcome back to Eye on Oakland. I'm Chuck Moss, your host. We're sitting here with our guest, Dani Walsh, Bloomfield Township Supervisor, and we were talking about master plans, strategic plans. But before we get into, we do those, what's just sort of general, how's the township? Finances, you still got the AAA bond rating? How's that all that doing?
Yes, we have a AAA bond rating, and even better are two things that we didn't have in 2019, which is an OPEB liability that was growing actually the funding was growing and the liability was going lower.
Okay, let me jump, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
OPEB is other post-employment benefits.
Correct.
When retirees have pension, and then they have OPEB, which is everything else, which is generally health care. And a little background is that in the early early zeros, whatever we call that decade, the aughts, is that we began to find out that none of this was funded. People were making promises to people. They had no idea even what they owed. So OPEB is basically health care, retiree health care. Okay.
And there wasn't anything done sinister. I mean, it is allowed to just pay your minimum on a credit card. And that's essentially what all these communities were doing.
Everybody, including the state of Michigan.
They were just paying the minimum. Well, we were definitely the worst in the state. We were 4% funded. When it came down and Rick Snyder said everybody has to be at 40%, Birmingham was above 40%. The city of Inkster, there were a few of us on the bottom that really stood out. 4% funding.
And of all communities, to find Bloomfield Township, which is one of the premier financial ones with your AAA bond rating, to find that that must have been a shock.
It was a shock. I know as a board member, we were surprised. So what happened is they went through about a 6 to 8 month view of, okay, we now have to come up with $4 million. Where are we going to find it? And again, when you don't have a strategic plan, you don't have these extra funding mechanisms. Like I helped create with our finance director the capital improvement fund to keep things liquid. When you know that 2 years from now you have a $500,000 plow truck to buy, you don't stick it in the fund balance on a rainy day because you know it's coming. So we created these different funds that if people were thinking further out, they should have already had them. But it's with OPEB, we went in and, it started where they were at 4%, they started funding, and this board took a pretty hard look at it and said, hey, let's knock this out of the park. Let's try and get as high as we can, because that also opens you up to better negotiations and contracts. You can't add to a liability while you're under a corrective plan with the state. So it doesn't allow for retiree health care. It doesn't allow for pensions. So even if someone wants to discuss it, you can't. It's not allowed. So we're now currently already at 28.2%. And once you hit 40%, you're at that threshold where you're off this corrective action plan. So we have gone from 4% to 28.2%.
Governor has the current governor has not gotten rid of this, right?
Correct. No, and really they shouldn't, because this is to protect the retirees and make sure it's there.
Once again, boy, I'm going back to memory lane here. Is in like 04 maybe, or 03, Oakland County faced this, and Brooks called us all in and said, we don't have unlimited money.
Right.
We're like, go on, kid, it's April Fool's. No, we don't. Look, we have this, and began to address it then. Yeah. Of course, the state hadn't even begun to even look at it.
Right.
So yeah, well done. It is good, because the retirees, I mean, they depend on it.
You have to protect.
You do.
You have to protect those that protected you.
So now, housing prices. Housing prices are going up. The reason why I'm talking about that is because the proximate source of your revenue is obviously property taxes.
Right.
Do you know if you guys have made up the ground? In 08, everybody was here and it all fell off, but then it could only go up little by little because of Hadley and Prop 8. Right. Are you making it back, what you lost?
We are finally back at 2008 levels. So a lot of people, too, with townships, we have what's called the 10 mil cap. Unlike a city where your general in Birmingham, it's 18 mils. So even though Birmingham's a third of our population a third of our size and half of our population, it's almost double the tax rate. So because it's 18 mils, we as a township are not allowed to go above 10 mils. So you have to kind of work within your means.
Yes.
And it is something that not a lot of people realize. So when they say, well, we pay high taxes, we have to point out not only do townships only pay 10 mils, but we're just now back at 2008.
Yes.
So we are not way up here.
Yes.
It's hard because it came so fast in the last few years as well, with inflation and with that 5%. Normally you can't raise with Hadley. You can't go above a certain level.
5% of the rate of inflation,
Yes.
whichever is less.
And
Yes.
it was never close
No.
to 5, and it's been 5. the last
It's
couple.
been more than 5.
Right.
Yes.
But we can't go above 5.
No.
Yeah.
That's the limit. Is that, I remember, what was it, Bob Dado once said, this is back when the Great Recession had begun, he said,
Right.
you guys, you'll never get back, to where you were until maybe 2027. So congratulations, you beat it by 3 years. That's good. So have it back. But what challenges are you seeing now, budget out? 'Cause things are good, but what challenges are you seeing maybe?
Well, I know that we are lucky that with changing the way we budget, we do, again, they didn't do long-term planning. So right now we do not just a 5-year budget plan on capital, but some of them we do up to 10. I need to know your capital 10 and 15 years out. If you're water and sewer, if you're anything having to do with large infrastructure or really expensive things such as plow trucks. So with that budgeting, we were able to stabilize because there'd be years where they have tons of money, years where, oh my gosh, we need to buy 2 plow trucks. And that was what caused that chaos. So what happens is they would cut services, they would cut employees, or they just wouldn't fill open spots. So now with not only is our budget back, but our services are all back to pre-29. But even more important, the staffing levels are back to pre-recession. So for example, when you're talking about not just safety for break-ins or anything, but just even patrol. We didn't have a patrol unit anymore because it got cut. And in 2008, there were 66 police officers, I believe, but in 2019, it was down to 62. And they just weren't adding anymore, and then they physically cut the budget to only allow 62. We're now at 67. We've added social workers in, which help with, sometimes these calls don't need a police officer. They need mental wellness, which
How has that worked? Because I remember when you started it, and it was quite radical.
And it has been so amazing that more communities are with us. It started with it was Birmingham, Auburn Hills, and us with 1. Now it's Rochester Hills, Birmingham, Auburn Hills, and us with 2. And frankly, you could even get more because a lot of times, the domestic cases in particular, there's something going on that's not. It's not a police officer that's necessarily needed, but they have to be there for security. But having that social worker there to kind of talk them down and get them services with Oakland County.
So it has been a success. I'll be honest. I thought it was kind of stupid, and it turns out that I was dead wrong.
Well,
I'm glad I was wrong.
A lot of us didn't know how much mental illness was out there too. So you have somebody who calls because they think, and this is something that actually happened. They thought somebody was coming in through their vents. That's not somebody who needs the police. That's somebody who needs help. So when you're talking about almost 100 calls a month to the same person, not only is that person not getting help, that police officer's not doing police work.
It's got to keep going to Mrs. McGillicuddy's house to be sure that that they're not looking in the window. Yeah.
So it's not helpful for anyone. So now with Hillary, when she was able to go there, our social worker, that opened up Oakland County Health Network, which is amazing with what they have available that we as townships don't.
It's a very
It's amazing.
It's a very large.
Yeah, and so
operation.
now that person is getting help, and those officers are now available to do police work. So it's not to replace police work at all. It's to actually give the correct services so the police can focus on what they're here for.
Which is getting bad guys.
Yeah.
Now, really, you keep mentioning plow trucks. I thought fire engines. I just went down to the zoo to the Tons of Trucks event with our little grandson, and they told me the fire engine, that's like almost $2 million.
We just bought one that's $1.7 million. And it's our largest ladder truck ever. So it has a 100-foot ladder truck instead of we now normally have 75.
Well, in the old days, you only had 2 stories.
Right. And it's even trying to get to those large, I'm not that far from the road because I'm in an area where it was all built in the 60s. You have about an acre. But in some of the areas of Bloomfield Township, they are really far from the road. So to get even to there, you're adding all of these extras. So now that ladder truck, having that extra 30 feet to get closer to shoot the water into the roof, it's helping to save. But even the regular, like their SOAR truck is our special, when there's something important going on that's kind of out of the realm of just a fire. The cost of that, when we got the grant to get it, it was $500,000. By the time we went to buy it, the grant came in 2 years later, it was $800,000.
Inflation
amazing.
again, yes.
And all the
inflation.
ARPA money. People finally had money to buy plows and fire trucks. So immediately now you're in that whole supply and demand.
That's
You know,
right.
and now you're 30 months out for a build.
All that free money, believe it or not, leads to inflation.
Yeah.
Because the amount of stuff doesn't get any bigger, and the more money you have, the prices go up.
And it was great to
Economics
get
101.
things.
Thank you, Professor Mandelson. Yeah.
So it was great to have that to get those items, but you are now competing with other people looking for the same items.
That's right.
So it definitely slowed down the process too. A fire truck might normally take 20 months, and we were upwards of 32 months to get a fire truck.
Good old Spartan Motors over in,
Yeah.
was it Charlotte or wherever they are in Michigan Company.
Yeah.
Good. Spartan Motors has nothing to do with Michigan State, which is too bad. Yeah. All right. Well, great. Now you're kind of finishing your kind of your 4th-year term. What's been your biggest challenge in the 4 years?
Well, it's hard to remember, but my biggest challenge was inheriting a budget crisis and a pandemic. So when
The
I
pandemic.
started,
We all remember.
we there were a few of us that started at the same time because it was myself and the fire chief. He started in October of 20. I started in November of 20. And then at the time, there was a newer superintendent that started also around September, October. And we only knew the craziness of COVID, budget crises. So I would hear about how it used to be really easy and no problem. And I thought, no, we have life safety now that we have to deal with.
Yeah,
we have all of that.
Those days are gone forever. They were
Right.
fun, but
Getting us through that, we didn't lose any employees to health, thank goodness. We were pretty diligent on making sure everybody was okay. We continued services throughout. And even better, like I said, I inherited a budget crisis where we had the lowest staffing level since 2008. Services were cut. And to be able to turn that around in under 4 years, I am amazed what my team has done. And it wasn't just me. You can't do that without the board. You can't do that without department heads and with employees who were willing to help get us through this. So honestly, I'm just amazed when you think back just 4 years ago, how far we've come.
well, Bloomfield Township, of course, is, you get out of southeast Michigan or Oakland County, everybody goes Bloomfield Township, you have to be absolutely rich. Well, maybe compared to, Ontonagon up in the UP.
Right.
But, just because the citizens may or may not, Bloomfield Township is it's middle-class houses, the ones, 2-story, like I grew up with my parents in Midland.
Right.
Same thing, and those neighborhoods look great.
Yeah.
I remember during the Great Recession, walking door to door like in 10 and finding a third of those houses empty.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of them that are here too, we have the highest senior population in Oakland County. So a lot of the people were here in the 60s and 70s and they're aging in place. So although Bloomfield to others are the Matt Ishbias of the world, although yes, there are some here, the rest of us are middle class. And
Well, yeah, we're not talking about the city of the same name,
Right.
But yes, it's really it's good to see the township. Township's doing well, and township is kind of it's always good. It's good, and maybe someday they will get MDOT. MDOT will be finished.
Right. But at least it was delayed for a good thing. We
Yes.
saved the ramp.
Yes, for those of us who use it.
Yes.
All right. Well, we're going to have to unfortunately call it quits here because we're out of time. It's been wonderful talking
Thank
to
you,
you.
Chuck. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, well, don't say that. I mean, we're not. We still have a few minutes to get into something. No, I really appreciate your coming on and talking to everybody. So thank you all. I'm Chuck Moss. Thank you to
Thank
Dani
you.
Walsh, Bloomfield Township Supervisor, for joining us here. And thank you for joining us here on Eye on Oakland.